everyone, welcome. This is Psychology 1102, and we will be doing basically our first lesson today, just an overview of what you should have learned in the past week, which are some very important points, so do not forget them, and maybe go back to this video if there's some things that you wanted to make sure that you have for your upcoming midterm. So what we're going to be discussing today is basically the main points from lecture 1, which is what is nature versus nurture, what is evolutionary psychology, and then also an application to sexuality, how each sex prefers to basically have intercourse. What is the standard or preferred way? So we're going to be talking about that, and then the last thing we're going to do is go over one example that should be on the midterm. So hopefully, I hope you like my video and please subscribe. So, the first thing you want to go over is nature versus nurture, and what is the difference between them. So let's go over nature. Nature is the genetics. So we inherit 50% of our DNA from mom and dad, 50%. And in our DNA, we have segments of coding regions, which are called genes. And they are made up of nucleotides, and nucleotides are made of a phosphate, sugar, and a base. And we have 4 bases, which are A, C, T, and G. You want to remember basically the pairing between these guys. So A always pairs with T, and C always pairs with G in DNA, okay? So, nature is basically inherited from both of your parents, and this can influence our behavior overall, okay? So next, we are going to be talking about nurture. And this is how the environment influences who we are. So our environment is influencing us. And we will learn later, it influences us by our epigenetics. So we won't learn this in this lesson, but the next lesson you will see something of epigenetics, which I think is a very important concept, but we won't be getting it to this video right now. So back to nurture. It is how the environment influences us. And an example is that sports can promote muscle growth by activating specific genes. And that's kind of cool. And this is where epigenetics comes into play. So, if you noticed, I highlighted activating specific genes. So the first thing to notice is sports, and then activating specific genes. So our environment is influencing our genetics, or I should say epigenetics. And that's kind of cool. Like, the outside, our environment, can influence and shape who we are. Incredible. Okay, so that's nurture. Now we are gonna go to talk about the most important question. Is it nature or is it nurture that influences who we are? Well, it's the both of them. Behavior can be influenced by our genetics, but then our nurture, our environment, can also shape who we are by inactivating or activating specific genes. So both of them play the part. It's not just a single one of them. Okay, so let's go down and talk about evolutionary psychology. Okay. So evolutionary psychology is the newest perspective of psychology. The goal is able to explain human behaviors that are universal and common. and they have some kind of evolutionary origin. So it's to explain behaviors that are common to all of us, or you could say that are universal. Okay? So, and it has an evolutionary origin. Okay, perfect. So basically the concept is basically to survive and to pass on these genes, and basically it's the survival of the fittest. Whatever animal or whatever its species it is, whatever one is the most fit will be able to pass on its genes. And adaptation is needed for survival as well, because in environments that the species is able to adapt to a certain climate, the better off it will be to pass on its genes. And the most dominant traits that are found will be the ones that are more easily passed on. Okay, so that brings us to our last topic for today, which we're going to be talking about sex. So, men prefer recreational sex. So, it is found that men do not mind to have sex with complete strangers. However, women want compassion, and they prefer to have intercourse with people that they're very close to, that they feel secure. But why? That's the real question. Why is there a difference between the two? Well, it is influenced by two different survival strategies. Men want to pass on their genes. So they're open because they want to pass on their genes. Okay? So that's their survival strategy. Women, they have a closed concept to sex because they want to ensure the survival of their offspring. Okay. Yes, so they have sorry about that, guys. They have two different survival strategies. That is why that happens. Okay, now here goes our example. So, I'm not going to show you the question quite yet, but we have a diagram here. Okay? This diagram is basically the DNA that is very wound up, compact. It's a helical structure. So there's two strands and they're anti-parallel. That's something you don't need to know, but just know that they're helical in structure, okay? And segments of the DNA are coding regions, and they code for a specific gene. And these genes are made up of nucleotides. And these nucleotides are made up of a phosphate, a sugar, and a base. But in this case, we're going to say a nucleotide is just its base here in the simplified diagram, okay? So this is one nucleotide. Whoops, sorry. Okay, this is one nucleotide. We're just not saying that there's a phosphate and a sugar in this diagram. We're just showing the base. So that is a nucleotide. Remember, A pairs with T, T pairs with A, C pairs with G. They're complementary to each other. So the one strand has the opposite nucleotide, okay? So, now the question is, if we used a book as an analogy, so I want you to match basically the features of a book to our DNA. It sounds confusing, but please let me explain. So, let's say we had to match. What would be considered the book on the DNA? What would be considered, let's say, the words? And what would be the letters of the words? And remember, we're only looking at DNA, genes, and nucleotides, okay? And nucleotides are these guys here. So, I'm going to let you work on that for a second. Please pause the video if you need to do so. Okay, so I hope you worked on it. So let's see the answers. So DNA would be considered the book. It is our genetic information. It has everything that we need in that book. Genes are considered the words. They are the things that dictate, that express certain genes to get certain proteins, okay? So they are the words of the book. And the nucleotides would be the letters, because they're the little, very, very small, they make up the words. But they are so fundamental. Even one change in a nucleotide can completely affect that gene. So they are fundamental. Well, everything here is fundamental. Just know this analogy. You will be seeing this on your midterm, almost guaranteed. So I hope you liked the video. Please let me know if there is something that you would like me to add for the next video. Okay? Bye!